Welcome. We continue to reflect on the fascinating places that people throughout the ages have encountered our living God. Sometimes the place is ordinary and common. Sometimes it's really weird or bizarre. But when the presence of the living God turns up, such places become sacred spaces of encounter. At one level, we know that God is everywhere. So, in a sense, everywhere is sacred because God is there. Yet many of us have at times experienced a deeper sense of that divine presence and have met with God in powerfully personal ways, often unexpectedly, and often leading to transformation or significant change. So now, we come to a lonely cave on a mountaintop after a 40-day journey into the desert. We come to a place of darkness, solitude and silence, and a place of despair. And to the God who is powerfully present in this silence and solitude. Sacred spaces in the cave. Let us give thanks to the Lord, for our Lord is good. Give thanks to the God of gods, who alone does great wonders, who by divine understanding made the heavens, who spread out the earth upon the waters, who made the great lights, the sun to govern the day, the moon and stars to govern the night. For sighing has become my daily food. My groans pour out like water. What I feared has come upon me. What I dreaded has happened to me. I have no peace, no quietness. I have no rest, but only turmoil. Lord, I cry out to you out of the depths of my despair. Hear my voice, O God, answer this prayer and hear my plea for mercy. I wait upon you, expecting your breakthrough, for your word brings me hope. I long for you more than any watchman would long for the morning light. Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, "May the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like that of one of them." Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there, while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush, sat down under it and prayed that he might die. "I've had enough, Lord," he said. "Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors." Then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. Elijah had just had what was probably the fieriest experience of his life. In front of the king, all the pagan prophets and all the people of Israel, he had seen the consuming fire of God fall on his sacrificial altar, drenched, dripping and overflowing with water. He had predicted drought-breaking rain which bucketed out of the sky. His life had been threatened by a powerful, malevolent queen, and he had fled into the desert. It's almost exhausting just reading what was going on in his life. He'd come to that place where he had had enough. He's exhausted in every way imaginable, and he feels completely alone. He's ready to die. Elijah sleeps, the sleep of the exhausted, and eats angelically provided food. He sleeps and eats again. Then he embarks on a 40-day journey into the desert, to the mountain of God. He enters a cave and spends the night there. It is silent, dark, incredibly isolated. He is completely and utterly alone and in the dark. Then God spoke. And I wonder when exactly? How long was it before God spoke? Was it just one night Elijah was there alone in the darkness and silence? Or longer? But even this word from God was not the real encounter. It was a hint, a promise. It was an opportunity for Elijah to express all that was going on inside him. And it was an invitation to go to the place of encounter, to ready himself to meet with God. Then, in the space of just 2 verses, there's an almighty wind that tears the mountain and shatters the rocks. An earthquake, which presumably continues to shake the mountain and shatter rocks. And a fire. And again, I'm intrigued about the timing of this. I've always read it in just one breath. Yep, there was wind, an earthquake and a fire. And then I get to the good bit, the gentle quietness. And now I wonder, how long did the wind rage for? How long was the mountain shaken by earthquake and frenzied by fire? Was it just moments? Or hours, days even? But in all of this, the first furious fire that consumed the sacrificial offerings, the miraculously provided food, the journey itself, and further flame and fire, in all of this, it was only in what came next that Elijah truly entered the presence of God, in the gentleness of sheer silence. The silence that invited Elijah to cover his face and draw nearer to God. The silence that gave space for God to speak, to listen, to renew. It was not the fire and flame, the wind and wildness that Elijah needed. It was not in the spectacular or scary that God was most present to Elijah. When his soul was laid bare, when he felt like he had given all he had to give, when he thought he was done, all that could address his deepest need and the longing of his heart was simply silence and solitude. Here, far, far away from victories and from threats, from magnificent achievements and from despairing depression, here, in the deep, dark silence of the mountain, in the wake of the mightiest eruptions of nature, here, alone and ready, he encountered God in a way he never had before. Yes, God speaks in fire, wind, and earthquake, in miraculous offerings of food, in drought-breaking rain. Yes. For Elijah, however, in this season of his life, it was in the silence and solitude of a cave on a mountain, far, far away from all that was familiar and comfortable, that God's voice, God's presence and restoring power touched and restored Elijah's aching soul. Take some time to reflect on Elijah's encounter with God. What stands out for you in this story? How have you experienced God in silence and solitude? Is there something that you are longing for at the moment? Or is there an invitation from God here for you? What do silence and solitude offer you in this season of your life? I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. Lord, I am humbled and quieted in your presence. Like a contented child who rests on its mother's lap, I'm your resting child, and my soul is content in you. Lord, teach me the silence of love, the silence of wisdom, the silence of humility, the silence of faith, the silence that speaks without words. Today, may you know the voice of God that whispers in the silence. May you know the loving presence of Spirit that enfolds you when you feel alone. May you see the radiant light of the Christ when there seems to be only darkness. And when the fire and storm pass over, when the wind and wildness rage, may you be held safely and gently in the palm of our God's hand.